Struggle, advocacy, one parent's journey through ADHD. Hello, and welcome to my podcast series of ADHD Awareness. Today's podcast episode brings an insightful interview with Mr. Pankaj Koria, a passionate, dedicated, and thoughtful parent. He has joined us live from England today, and it is a pleasure to have him on the podcast. In a world where parents are worried, intimidated, fearful of the realities that their children face, you are not only aware, but you are vigilant. Moreover, you have volunteered to help increase awareness, truly leading by example and emanating the ethos. In the joy of others lies our own, and in the progress of others rests our own. Pankaj is a chemical engineer by education and works at GSK. He has two children, one of whom has ADHD, whose name is Jay. I have been looking forward to interviewing you, Pankaj, and without further ado, let's get started. Understanding the diagnosis and emotional impact. Can you walk us through the moment you first realized your child might have ADHD? What thoughts and emotions were going through your mind?
Thank you, Kirtan, and equally it's a pleasure to be able to do this podcast with you. I think the first time we realized that Jay may have ADHD is when he started in reception year of school. He was only 4 years old then, so very young, but he would constantly fidget, he'd constantly get distracted. There'd be times when he wouldn't want to take part in activities, things didn't interest him, but despite being a good boy in general, all of these things happened. The teachers quickly kind of reached the conclusion that he was disruptive, but we knew something else was the cause, but we just didn't know what yet.
Yeah, that was very insightful of you, that how you were aware of his behaviors from an early age. That actually is very similar to how my childhood was. I was very expressive and I behaved very well around my parents, but once again, I was very disruptive in class. So how did the diagnosis affect your relationship with your son, both immediately and in the long term?
I think first of all, getting a diagnosis really helped us to understand what Jay was going through, and how to help him. Because before then, you really trying to hypothesize what could be causing the challenge. But once we had an idea, then we had a more targeted way to help him. It allowed us to also accept him for who he was, and also to provide more care than potentially just telling him off for his behavior, which is maybe more natural.
Yeah, what you said about accepting him for who he is and understanding some of his misguided actions is actually something that lots of parents around the world could learn, because due to lack of awareness in some parts of the world, scolding and mistreatment can often occur, and it's our responsibility to make sure that never happens. What were some early signs or challenges that others missed or misunderstood as bad behavior?
Well, there's very many. In fact, it seems to be almost the default that you're guilty until proven innocent. And certainly in the schools that we have, often that is the starting point. Kids can be branded very quickly as misbehaving, which means that they don't want to, do the right thing. Unless there's a diagnostic, there's not actually even any help provided, where they're legally required to provide the support that is needed. And so, whilst everyone's always trying to do the right thing, even in a good school that the Jay goes to right now, getting the support was difficult. So I do wonder how it might even be in schools where they're maybe not so supportive as the one that Jay has.
Yeah, it's a true shame that in some schools around the world, there are no regulations and there's no help that's provided to students with ADHD. I was very fortunate enough to be educated in a school that does have 504 plans for people with ADHD, but my mom really had to fight hard to be able to get me those accommodations. So did you face any internal doubts, guilt, or cultural stigma when deciding how to support your child? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I think personally, I didn't really feel any stigmas. These days ADHD diagnosis is quite common, so people are much more aware of it than maybe when I was growing up. But what I did find challenging was maybe having family, maybe non-professional kind of views where people have traditional values that children should be seen and not heard, and things like this that are very difficult to kind of change the mindset of. And that certainly didn't help in the short term, where ultimately we know that ADHD requires a different level of care, a different type of care, and a different approach altogether.
Yeah, there are plenty of cultural stigmas around the world, and I actually saw it in a lot of children at my summer seminar series this year and last year when I gave my summer seminars in Frisco, Texas, which I will actually link in the description below if you guys want to check those videos out. I do have footage from the seminar to show you a brief recap of them. And I actually am looking into researching these cultural barriers in the Indian population in North Texas, which is where I live. So what has been your experience navigating school systems? Were the teachers, counselors, and administrators receptive and informed?
As I already mentioned, unfortunately, the schools are just not that supportive until there's a diagnosis. And so, the first thing we did as parents was to get a private diagnosis. In the UK, there's a long waiting list for getting a diagnosis, but it was only when we had that diagnosis confirmed that legally action was required and we got the support that was needed. But we'd still lost at least half a year. Some parents lose, years, maybe even the whole school year, trying to get a diagnostic and the support, and then you're trying to catch up. Some people have to wait maybe over 2 years just to get a diagnostic, so you can imagine just how challenging it is. But then once we did have the legal diagnostic, there was the right support. There was some acknowledgement. It wasn't as fast as we would like. Clearly, we were using a public service where often the help is limited. But we did have, dedicated time with the head teacher and the teachers around Jay. They were able to kind of provide the support needed under the requirements of the schooling here. And certainly with our oversight, we were able to ramp up that support as needed, but it was certainly a bit of a battle. It wasn't necessarily open doors and very easy.
I truly commend how persistent and proactive you were in getting Jay the help he needs. And actually, that is very similar in my story, how my mother was very proactive and persistent, just as you were, in getting the help I needed, which again, I'll link in the description my interview with my mother, which goes into more detail of how in the techniques she helped with my childhood. Were there moments when you felt your child was misunderstood or unsupported by educators? How did you respond to this?
Yeah, I mean, it seems for Jay, he has a kind of a double whammy effect where he's one of the only Asian kids in this predominantly white school. And sometimes he can't decipher whether he's being misunderstood because he's different. He's a Swaminarayan Hindu, he can't eat certain food and things like that. He has different practices, or whether he's being fully accepted for the behavioral aspects where he needs support. So that's kind of where it was challenging.
Yeah, actually, in preschool for myself, I actually was fully passionate about being a Hindu or specifically a Swaminarayan, where I would actually chant no meat, no fish, no egg, no pepperoni, because I'm a vegetarian as a Hindu and Swaminarayan. So it became like a slogan at lunchtime. So I turned lots of friends unintentionally into vegetarians where they would like start refusing their lunches which had meat. It was
Yeah.
quite hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. Children can have a good effect. My children don't eat gelatine containing sweets. It's quite popular in the UK. So Jay somehow turned his friends into non-gelatine eating, even though there's, lots of cheaper alternatives. And even some of them now want to celebrate Diwali, because it's also like Christmas where you get extra presents. So certainly some positives for being different as well.
Yeah, how has ADHD changed your approach to parenting, discipline, and communication?
ADHD has completely reshaped the way that I think about parenting. Maybe previously as a traditional Hindu or Indian parent, we tend to copy the types of parenting style that our parents have used with us. But understanding the rules and understanding what is needed for Jay, I've learned that it's not about enforcing the rules. It's more about understanding why certain behaviors happen instead of jumping straight to consequences. trying to take a pause and asking myself, is this a choice or is it the brain's trying to, struggling to manage impulses or trying to focus? I had to get really creative with discipline, using structure, visual reminders, positive reinforcement, being more consistent, but also flexible enough to adjust when something's clearly not working as he grows up. The biggest thing that's changed for me is communication. I can't just talk at him and expect it to stick. I have to go down to his level, keep instructions short and precise, as I mentioned, visual, check for understanding. I try to listen just as much as I talk because I've learned that when he feels heard and understood, he's a lot more responsive. I've learned to be very patient, empathetic, more aware, and also my parenting is not about making my child fit to my expectations, but helping him to discover and thrive, but still stay true to who he is himself.
Yeah, once again, this is a very good parallel to how my childhood worked because ADHD does run in my family's bloodline a lot. It goes all the way back to my grandfather. He suffered from ADHD all of his life. He never got a diagnosis until until his final years, and he never even understood what it was to the full extent to which he should have known it. And so that influenced how my parents had to change their style of parenting to help me adapt to the environment I was in and the different country and everything. So what routine systems or tools specifically have worked in your family?
So, to start with, as I mentioned, we found it difficult. We struggled. We found it difficult to find out what works. It was a bit like trial and error. We tried lots of things. Few things worked. Maybe things like setting clear, bite-sized tasks, setting timers, specific tasks, providing more education as to why we were asking for something or why something needed to be done, rather than asking Jay to just blindly follow, a certain, command. It seemed to work in general, but Jay tends to be quite self-sufficient. He gets ready himself. He does his homework. He knows what he needs to get done. He's witty enough to find loopholes for things that he wants to get, which is certainly impresses us. We want him to express himself. I think the other part is the emotional regulation's been key. As a traditional parent, we don't
Yes.
usually expect or accept that children can be expressive about how they're feeling. But to us, that's really important that Jay can express when he's happy, when he's sad, a wide range of emotions. The key thing is letting him know that he's safe and he can be himself around us.
Yeah, it's very heartwarming for me how much Jay has adapted to ADHD and how much he could self-regulate himself. What's the hardest part of parenting a neurodivergent child that people don't usually see or talk about?
I mean, the first word that comes to my mind is patience. We're in a world where, fast working, lots of things have to get done in a hurry. Everything is always needs to be done, in a certain way. But being patient, it's easy to say, but very difficult to do in the moment. He's got a younger sibling who's very different. We don't want to take sides. We just want everyone to be their best selves. And again, we've been on a journey of exploring what works for him, but also what works for us, and finding a way to maybe find a safe ecosystem that can be productive and healthy.
Yes. That actually is again a key part of one of the techniques my mother used when she was parenting me during my childhood. She would always tell me patience means to wait. She would even use the things I like to promote it, like Elmo, everything. Have there been moments of frustration or helplessness, and what got you through them?
Yeah, plenty. We're all human. We find the right way forward is not always easy, especially both of us, both parents work. We work in high stress environments. But what gets us through is our faith. It's so easy to talk about spirituality, but certainly one thing that does help us is keeping faith. Talking about it makes it easier to deal with.
I appreciate that honest response of yours. How has your child surprised you? In what ways that made you rethink what success or intelligent really means and looks like?
Yeah, for me, this is an easy one. Jay is ultra creative. When he harnesses his neurodiversity, we have seen some amazing brilliance. We've seen some creativity that I just wouldn't expect of somebody his age, let alone anybody. But to me, that just reinforces the point that he's okay just as he is.
Yeah, I actually have heard a bit how he's a Lego expert, and I'm a little envious of that because I know he has lots of Lego sets more than I probably do. So yeah, that makes me envy a lot. In what ways has your child's ADHD made him unique, creative, or strong inside?
Yeah, for me, Jay is the way he thinks is very different. He'll often bring different ideas to the table or different perspectives to any situation. It always helps to look at more diversely at solving a problem. He sort of offers us with encouragement when we're not feeling so confident. Recently I was at a football tournament and we were down to play a really tough opponent. And Jay just looked at me and said, if you can believe it, you can achieve it. And I was just stunned, but also really boosted that he was thinking about how he could help me to get through that tough moment when often it's the adults that are looking to help the children through the tough moments. So for me, this is where his creativity, his difference has really helped in this situation in particular.
Yeah, that actually brings a response from me how my dad always tells me what the mind believes and the heart believes, the body achieves. Because if you put your mind to it and you envision yourself achieving that goal and you don't think of any other alternate scenario, you will always accomplish it as long as you put in the legwork for it.
Absolutely.
Have have there been breakthrough moments that reminded you why your advocacy matters?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the breakthrough was more in the understanding that he does not have a disability. He just has a neurodiverse way to think and behave, which is very simple to say, but once we got that mindset fixed, everything else became a lot easier.
Yeah, it's very similar to me how because I have ADHD, I have to work harder than some other people to achieve the same things. And my mom keeps telling me how you may work harder than others to achieve the same things, but that's you trying to make self-regulate yourself. What has your child taught you about patience, resilience, or love?
For me, this is maybe the shortest but most straightforward answer. Jay has reminded me and reminded us, almost on a daily basis, even though it's hard work, it's worth it. Every moment we put in is absolutely worth it. And that gives us the encouragement that we're doing the right thing in the right way. And certainly we'll be successful, but also will help him to be the best himself as well.
Fully agreed. What do you wish every teacher understood about kids with ADHD?
I mean, if I could talk to the teachers, I mean, the teachers work hard all day. They're in a high pressure environment. But if I could tell them one thing, I wish I could help them understand that they are not trying to disrupt the environment that we're in, but the environment is not set up for their needs always. And so trying to find a way to support all children to be the best they can be, which is what teachers have signed up for, is certainly something I would remind them of.
If you could tell other parents one thing who are just beginning their journey with their child with ADHD, what would it be?
For me, this is a no-brainer. Get your child diagnosed as soon as you suspect something, even if you have to pay for yourself. Take that time to support your child in making a safe space.
Definitely
Every
worth it.
minute is absolutely worth it, and every minute you lose is absolutely you'll regret that time lost. So get them diagnosed if at all you suspect something.
How can school communities do a better job supporting not just the students, but the families of the neurodivergent students?
This is a really tricky one. So even though I've kind of said that ADHD is now commonly accepted, the support groups are just really not there. They're really much emerging right now. It's an emerging field. So what would be really helpful if there were more community groups that you can get involved in how neurodiverse children operate, also helping people and teachers to tackle each case one by one rather than ultimately trying to do it as a group, because sometimes it's one size fits nobody, which is not helpful either.
Do you believe the education system is evolving fast enough to support neurodivergent students? What changes would you like to see?
For me, I think it's a simple but harsh reality of where we are right now. The education system is just really not centered around our current reality. It's a very outdated system. As I mentioned, one size fits nobody. I'd love to see a more personalized approach get adopted to help each individual to thrive in their own unique way, whether it's ADHD or something else.
If you could go back in your own journey with your son and tell your past self to do something that you weren't able to do then, what would it be?
I think for me, it's back to that reflection. Everything will be okay. Keep the faith, do your best, and accept the rest. That's the one thing that I would probably reflect on the most.
Closing reflections. What makes you most proud of your child today?
Again, this is super simple and super easy for me to answer. Jay is smart, he's witty, he's expressive. He makes us proud just by being himself without having to mask constantly, which is what we absolutely love.
If you have ADHD, that is not your label. Your label is your personality, and that's all that matters in this case. What gives you hope for the future of children with ADHD and their families?
I think the hope I carry is that, now that the understanding is there and in general it's accepted as normal. So, for me, the hope I carry is that parents have to fight much less hard to get the meaning support they need for their kids.
Okay, thank you, Pankaj, for your amazing answers. And as I requested you to write a letter to your son and to share with the audience. So now I ask for you to do that.
Absolutely. So I've got my letter here, so I'm just going to read it out if that's okay.
Sure thing.
Dear Jay, from the moment you came into my life, you've been this spark, bright, unpredictable, and completely unforgettable. You make me laugh with your quick wit. You amaze me with the worlds that you create in your imagination. And you melt my heart with the way that you love so deeply and completely without any expectation. Jay, you have a gift. You see things differently, not just with your eyes, but with your whole heart. You notice little details other people miss. You ask questions no one else thinks of. You can turn an ordinary moment into something funny, surprising, or beautiful. That's not just creativity, that's a gift. I know that sometimes having ADHD can make certain moments harder. You might feel frustrated when your thoughts race ahead, or when sitting still feels impossible, or when people can't quite understand what's going on in your mind. But please remember, this is ADHD. It's just one chapter in your story. It's a chapter that comes with strengths as well as challenges. It's part of why you're full of ideas, so full of life, and so full of love. I want you to know that no matter what, I'm always on your side. I'll be here to help you find your way, to remind you that your brain is not wrong. It's powerful, creative, and wired for brilliance. I'll be here to celebrate your victories, pick you up when you fall, and listen to every joke, every dream, and every wild idea you want to share. Jay, I'm so proud to be your dad, not just because of what you can do, but because of who you are. You're my son, my joy, my teacher, and my inspiration. And I will love you always, endlessly, without condition, for all my days. Love always, Dad.
I love that letter. It's very heartwarming. It reflects on themes about self-acceptance because self-acceptance first starts with your parents providing you the love and support you need. And you have clearly given all of that to Jay. So I'm pretty sure that he has everything he needs to succeed in life. Pankaj, this has been such an honest, heartfelt, and inspiring conversation. Your willingness to share both the challenges and the joys of raising a child with ADHD has not only shed light on the realities families face in the real world, but also given hope and encouragement to so many listening. Your story is a reminder that awareness and advocacy begin at home, and that patience, love, and persistence can change a child's future. On behalf of myself and all of my listeners here at ADHD Awareness, thank you for leading by example, for speaking with such sincerity, and for sharing that neurodiversity is not a limitation, it is a different way of thinking and to shine. To our audience today, thank you for reaching the end of this video. I would appreciate you all if you could subscribe, as always. And thank you for reaching the end of this video, and like it as well and share it with everyone across the globe that you are in touch with, as it will spread the word of awareness more for ADHD. Thank you, Pankaj, for volunteering your time today, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.